Watch Talk Heathen live Sundays at 1 p.m. Central. Visit tiny.cc/YTTH and call into the show at 512-991-9242 or connect to the show online at tiny.cc/callth.
Hello, hello, and welcome to another episode of Truth Wanted, the live call-in show that happens every Friday night at 7 p.m. Central, where we want to hear from you. We want to know what you believe and why. Then Truth Wanted is a production of the ACA, the Atheist Community of Austin, a nonprofit organization dedicated to promoting atheism, critical thinking, secular humanism, and the separation of religion and government. We have a new website, so if you want to check out any of our mission statements, I would highly suggest go checking that out at atheist-community.com. And here on Truth Wanted, we have a special privilege of having different guests every week. And I love this because I always get to pick who my guest is. And this week, my guest is the wonderful Rion. Hi, Rion.
Hello. Hi, how are you?
Hi. I'm good. I'm so happy you're here. I've been looking forward to this for the last couple of weeks since we hung out on a different program. Can you tell our audience who you are and what kind of stuff you do online and where they can maybe check out your work?
Sure. Yeah, I thank you actually for having me here. I'm really excited. It was nice to get to talk to you a few weeks ago, and I've been looking forward to this. So, what was your question again? See, I've already forgotten.
I would just tell our audience who you are and what do you do? How would I have even found you online? Right. What is our thing we have in common?
Well, so I am an ex-Jehovah's Witness, and I started making content a couple years ago. We were just talking about this, and I didn't realize how long ago it was that I started making content. I can't believe it's probably been around 2 years now. And when I had first come to TikTok, I was really just looking for information, and boy, did I find it. And then once I found it, I was like, well, I have to look at this stuff myself. Like I now need to see it firsthand because I was fed a lot of misinformation from the Jehovah's Witness organization. And once I started researching, like, oh my gosh, like my world started to change. Like I really dug into some stuff that I was afraid to dig into because, they put the fear of God in you. And now I know there's nothing to fear. And I get to have fun and enjoy myself and deconstruct the Bible.
Yeah, I also discovered you on TikTok a couple of years ago, and that's what we were talking about earlier. Like how many years ago was it now? Because I'm not very active on TikTok. That's one of your main platforms, right?
Yeah, I spend a lot of time there. I do stuff on YouTube also. It's a little harder going on YouTube trying to figure out the algorithm and things like that are just not in my forte.
Right.
So TikTok seems to be a little easier to pick up.
I think a lot of people are coming to realize this, that like as far as kind of quickly being able to get your content out there, and like a lot of people see your stuff really fast on TikTok. There's a lot of this kind of conversation going on, like these apologetics and like quick replies and I was going to say retweet, but that's not even the right thing. Reposting
it has its own little ecosystem. Right?
And I go through phases with it, with being on TikTok in general. But I've seen a lot of your stuff on there, and you have highly interesting and also highly entertaining TikTok. So I've been wanting to have you on for a while.
I try. Like what I wanted to do is like I was watching other people kind of deconstruct in front of me, and like one of the first people I followed, their name is Ember, ex-Jehovah's Witness, and sharing stories, and I was like, oh my goodness, I've experienced stuff like that. And I was
you have a story too.
There were so many other people who were just like me with similar issues surrounding high control religion, and not even just Jehovah's Witnesses. There were other people leaving cults who've gone through the same stuff, and it's just a different package. and it was just blowing me away. And I was like, if people want to watch it happen, like watch me deconstruct, watch me read through stuff, figure stuff out, they can come along for the journey. And that's really all I've been doing. And it's really cool kind of to go back and look at some of my older videos, and I go, actually, I've learned
Right.
a bit more than I knew back then. So I kind of have like this video is that vlogging? Am I too old? Is that the right
I
word?
don't
Is it?
know.
But now I have this catalog of things that I can, and I don't mind, because it's okay,
Yeah.
because I don't have to be right. That's not what this is about anymore.
Yeah,
Like
you've
being
kind
a
of invited
Christian, you
people
had
along
to,
for the journey, right? Because like I
yeah,
think that's a really common thing. Like you said, there's so many different people who have left different variations of like a faith tradition, and like there's a
right.
couple things we have in common and a couple like major differences, but like there's this commonality that there's this huge learning curve, and whether you're interested in the text or if you're interested in the tradition or
Yeah.
the split offs or whatever it is, like there's so much to be like learned, and new
Yeah.
information constantly. And for a lot of people that does keep up for a long time, there's so much to deconstruct depending on kind of what religion you come from. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's
And it's
really
every
interesting.
which way. Like when you deconstruct, I'm sure, as you know, like you're not just deconstructing the religion itself. You're entangling your mind from like a system that you were set up in, and your
Right.
behaviors and everything that's tied into that. And like I'm learning new language. Like I didn't even know like fallacies. I didn't know what a damn
Oh no, I
fallacy
know.
was. I'm still learning what fallacies are. But gaslighting, this is not terminology that we used inside of cults. Like I had
Right.
no idea I was being gaslit for all these years. So not we have so much to wrap our heads around in
Hmm.
deconstruction. Like I think Christians look at it as like this silly little, oh, we're just leaving
Like a
the
little
the you
fad, right? They talk about it like it's just this new coolest kind of
no,
style of
honey,
music or whatever,
no.
but it's
This is
it's it's a
deep.
whole
It's
thing. Yeah.
dark. Yeah. There's like I call it kind of like the shadow work. You have to really like get
Yeah.
down to get down to the innermost, like kind of scary parts of the stuff that you've been taught, and it's not fun. It's not
Right.
always fun.
No, it's absolutely not. And I think that's like one a really common misconception that, people who are still kind of in their different bubbles or communities, they think it's kind of not that hard. Maybe because I don't know, a lot of
Right.
time maybe we present that we're just having fun, but maybe that's just the part that we
Yeah.
show online a lot of the times. But
Right.
I mean, the reality is that there's this ton of work a lot of people, and depending on where you are in your life too, like I deconverted, I'm in my 30s, I have kids and I'm married. Like there's a different component to like what my deconstruction meant than to
Right.
somebody who is younger or is older. There's just these different things that you have to come face to face with, and you have nowhere to really hide from it. And you have to think
Right.
like, do I still value this? And what do I think about that? And how am I going to go about in my life in that way? Um,
A-
it's so
and you
inviting people along for the journey. Like I
yeah.
wish more people that were still in it kind of like saw what kind of a privilege that is for people who are that they have to be able to access a lot of people's journeys when they're showing it like that. And
Yeah.
even in the mishaps and like the things that we change our mind on later on, to
Right.
see that we can change our minds on things, and it's a constant like
Mhm.
learning process, right?
Oh yeah. And I mean, I still have processes I'm going to be going through. It's a journey. Like
Yeah, I
it's going to take a long time to undo some of this stuff.
right.
It's not just, oh, now I know better, I'll do better. It doesn't always work like that.
That's right.
Some of this stuff is just automatic. Like I don't even realize I think a certain way until I really like break it down and go, wait a minute. Like why do I feel this way about this certain topic? And lo and behold, it probably goes way deeper than I ever imagined. And uh, just for instance, when you see things around the world happen, like you being in a doomsday kind of
Right.
prep kind of
I do want to get
church,
into that. Yeah.
right? But
Yeah.
you're told these things that just keep you in this constant escalation of when's the next shoe going to drop. So you don't really get to. I just felt like I never really got to take care of myself. I don't know if anybody else feels
Yes.
that way, but I was always just trying to, like, I was fixing myself, but I was fixing these made up sins, what I mean?
Right. I
Like
know. It's a
just
totally different
really silly things
it's a
that
different
were
thing now when you're like doing some self work or whatever. If you're trying to like
right.
grow in a certain area of your personal development rather than like what we thought was kind of personal development at the time. It's like a different thing, right?
Right. Oh my God. It's completely like back in the, like, oh my gosh, like some of the counseling that you would get from like Jehovah's Witnesses elders, it
Right.
would be just, how do I stop my husband from abusing me? Oh, well, see right here, the scripture says that in the household we should have Christ, right? And then below Christ is the head of the household. So if you listen to the head of the
Just listen
household,
better. Yeah.
you see, there's your problem. You're not listening to who's above you. Like, oh, thanks. Like, what kind of
Yeah.
solace, like, what kind of help is that? It's not. So
Right. And
you
like
don't learn how to do this stuff,
you
how to
have to brush
process.
that stuff aside for a little while, right? And then like eventually you're kind of like,
Right.
this is not helping. Like
This is
this is
not right.
not helping. I do want to get into that.
You don't know
I
that.
forgot to mention earlier. Obviously this is a live call-in show. So we do have some lines open. If
Yeah.
anybody wants to call in and talk to myself or Ryan about anything that we talk about today, or if something you've had on your mind lately, the phone number is 512-991-9242, or you can contact us through your computer at tiny.cc call or /call TW. So please call in now because there are, only so many calls we can take in an hour. We love to talk to you. Ryan, I
This
wanted
is
to.
old school. Why did I literally this is like something kids would not understand.
I
Okay,
think
I'm hoping the older people
they
know
do.
what this.
I don't even know how you do like a pretend phone now because it's just like this for any of the podcasts. We're just tapping our palms right now.
Sorry, y'all.
So one of the things that I find really interesting, you're my first guest on that's former Jehovah's Witness, but
Oh,
I
awesome.
personally have found, like, I spent a lot of time listening to former Jehovah's Witnesses, which is kind of strange because I grew up in an evangelical religion,
Right.
and specifically I was Pentecostal for most of my my religious life that I had. But one thing that I found incredibly similar was this constant fear of the doomsday. I think like we called it the rapture because that was the signifying event of the end times. I know in Jehovah's Witnesses, they call it Armageddon. Can you tell us a little bit about your experience growing up in that?
Oh, my goodness gracious. So, I didn't know that I would even be here at this age because they told me so often as a kid that I wouldn't make it to, I wouldn't live to see through graduation. And lo and behold, I'm way beyond graduation at this point. So you have this influx of just really bad material in informational graphics that they have inside of their books, their pamphlets, and this is circulated to children. I even have my book of Bible stories. I'm not sure if I can pull that out, but it's the book from the Jehovah's Witnesses for children, and in it is graphic imagery of end of times, of people, other people, like stuff that children really should not be seeing.
Yes.
And but you're inundated with it. So you kind of grow up with just this, you just know the world is going to come to an end. You just know it. You just don't know, when. And of course now I don't believe that, but how is a child supposed to know the difference? So it was really scary anytime something bad happens, a super bad storm.
Right.
Oh, is that the end of the world? You just don't know. And of course, anytime something happens in the media, the Jehovah's Witnesses are really good at playing that up into turning it into something biblical, end of times. So they really get people so intertwined with worrying about when the end's going to come. They don't necessarily realize what's being fed to them is all just rubbish because they're too afraid. That fear, they're just indoctrinated with fear. So they're not gonna question because they don't want to be the ones dying in Armageddon, because when Jesus comes back, that's what they think. When Jesus comes down and he has to get rid of all the non-believers like me and you, and probably a good bit of people in the audience.
Yeah.
Sorry, guys, I don't mean to deliver that. My bad. But yeah, we're not going to make it because we have to they literally just said we have to kiss the sun. That was one of their talks recently.
Oh, really?
Yes. So if you don't
I
kiss
haven't
God's
kept up on
son,
the more recent stuff, but like I think that one thing that was very common with the like what do they call it? Like the governing body, right?
yes, the governing
Um,
body.
so
They're the
like
ones
one
who
of
make
the
like the rules and regulations for
yeah,
the
which
organization.
and it's like, oh man, like we could literally talk for like hours about this because it's like
Oh, I'm
fascinating how
sure.
they are very like self-governed almost, and it's wild. But one thing I will say
Yeah.
that is like very common with a kind of a broader evangelical belief, and maybe on a more narrow perspective, the Pentecostal charismatic belief is like this idea of the end coming right now. So like even the last couple of years has been like a heyday for them, like with the
Oh,
stuff that's
yeah.
been going on around in the world, which are when you look at it in a broader perspective, you can see like, okay, things like this happen. Pandemics do happen. These are some of the things that are going on are the natural consequences of living in a natural world and in a world
Right.
where we maybe have affected things as with climate change and things like that. Anyway, there's a
Ecological
lot of this
damage.
focus on this being the signs of the times. But I remember being in high school and like Y2K came around and like, oh,
Yes.
credit cards had chips in them. And those were the signs of the times. And like, there's always been this panic around look, whatever was the newest technology, basically.
Yeah.
And I know
It's
for
always
my,
changing.
right. And so, and I mean, if we look back, I mean, over the last couple hundred years with like these kind of doomsday cults, as they call them, like, this is not new. This idea that the
No,
world is ending, like I think it
no.
goes back hundreds of years even to
Yeah,
like
I think
when
to the
they've been predicting the end of
1700s.
right. Yeah.
I think it was somewhere around there because I was trying to trace back like the JW kind of like lineage to the Millerites,
Hmm.
and then there was like a group before them where they came from, and a lot of people, a lot of different groups were stemming from these other. So it was kind of like a hub. So whatever was going on in life must have been spurring on, because obviously people are was same thing Jehovah's Witnesses are doing. They're taking whatever's happening around them and they're now pouring it into the scripture to create whatever
Hmm.
outcome they need to have.
Yeah. And I
I mean,
believe
they
that's
curate it.
right. I believe that's called eisegesis, is like in the
Yeah.
when you're like putting your own
Yeah,
current
your
and you're
own
putting it into the
twist.
scripture, which is the exact opposite of something when you're doing like textual criticism, where you're trying to like see what was the original intent of the author. And like
Right.
I have found a lot of
Context.
like a lot of healing or like moving forward, just like listening to critical scholars talk about the textual criticism about the Bible and realizing like that, what they're talking about like in first Thessalonians, whatever, like had a lot more to do about the political climate of first century Palestine than it had anything to do with credit cards or Elon Musk or whatever else they want to say. um,
Right?
yeah. And so, I mean, for me, I went through a big process of like coming out of this, but realizing even after I hadn't believed it, I had a lot of like this physical work I had to do because I realized I had been living in
Yeah.
a state of hypervigilance for years because
Mhm.
I also did not expect to live past like 25. And here I am still kicking. And like, how do you deal
Yeah.
with that? Like,
Right.
I think that's the insidious kind of thing that I think, and I see it in my own, my own family and people who still kind of see that. Like, I don't think that a lot of those people who are still in it realize like the stress they're under, like the amount of
Yeah.
cortisol that's going through their body at any
Right.
moment because they think it's the
Mhm.
end at any moment. So,
Everything's a catastrophe. Like
yeah.
everything is bigger than it needs to be. Any little minor thing is just over exaggerated and turned into something like it's really not. Yeah.
Right. And it can
It's
cause a
much.
lot of like obviously over speculation and paranoia. It can cause stress. It can cause like
Oh yeah.
it's probably I mean I say this like I'm
Depression.
speculating, but I'm going to say right now it causes stress in relationships because you can't plan that far into the future because you're constantly expecting things to be very short-lived. Like
Right.
I think this is a very common thing that happens with any religion that has this kind of end of
I didn't really
times
have a plan.
view, right? I didn't
I
either.
mean, I didn't think I mean, I didn't go to, well, I wasn't allowed to go to get any kind of education, but because it's all from Satan's world.
Right.
So,
I
and
think
and
that's one thing that is
you'll be
like,
a bad influence to get
yeah.
influenced by people.
The time that I spent kind of looking at Jehovah's Witness as like just part of my deconstruction, I was really surprised by how many things were just said outright. And like some of the very similar kind of things were insinuated kind of in my circle, but they say it like outright in
Oh yeah.
in Jehovah's Witness, there's strict lines of allegiance between like who you're allowed to associate with. And
Yep.
I don't want to speak for you, but
No, it's
your experience in it,
absolutely
I'm sure.
true, which is the really damaging part of it, because it's so insular. So you build this network of people that you've relied on the entirety of your life. You've grown up with them. They're your friends, they're your family. You see them all the time, because you're going to Kingdom Hall like 4 days a week and out in service with these people. So it's really difficult if you're like me, someone who gets disfellowshipped, and all of a sudden you don't have this network of people anymore,
Right.
and you're all by yourself, and they're not allowed to associate with you. I mean, it's like you died a death. You died a death. It's like you.
Yeah, no, I understand what
like
you mean, though. Yeah,
it's like you're watching your own funeral.
A whole life
Yes.
ends, but not in like a literal sense, but
not
like your whole life structure comes to an end because
exactly,
you've changed your position on something.
Yeah, right. Just for having questions or whatever it might be, you could literally lose everything that you've ever known.
Right.
Which is heartbreaking, because I see people go through it every day. People message me and tell me like their mom doesn't talk to them, or their dad doesn't, or their children doesn't talk. I mean, you name it. People don't talk to family members and friends because that's what the governing body tells them to do. And imagine if that's your business. Like, what if because a lot of Jehovah's Witnesses have businesses tied together, like they're window washers or cleaners. I mean, they're more than that, but a lot of them are.
There's a lot. Yeah, there's a lot of trades, right? Like there's
a lot of trade
my
work,
impression
because
of it,
you want flexible hours. You want to be able to have flexible hours because you need to be able to attend church. You need to be able to go out in field service, and that's just something you can't deviate from, because if you don't attend all the meetings, you can. There's consequences for things like that. And when I say consequences, I mean, people won't want to associate with you because they'll be worried that you could be bad associate, even though you're still Jehovah's Witness and you might not be doing anything wrong. If you're not attending meetings and showing, you have to show. It's all about show for these organizations. You have to be there, or else you're not really giving it your all, not giving Jehovah your all. You're not relying on him. And that is a problem. So a lot of people, who have their businesses intertwined, they're afraid to leave. They're not only afraid to leave and lose their friends and family, but they're afraid to leave because they could lose their business too. Could you imagine?
Yeah, I think like you don't shy away from using the word cult with with your media. Like,
it's a cult.
And I
witnesses are a cult.
I know the word can get like thrown around a little bit sometimes, like, oh, everybody who shops here, it's a cult. No, like I think that it's fair to say that, and I think like
absolutely
from
they have distinct things that cults do that what it is.
Yeah. So I don't know if I'm sure you are, but like familiar with like Steve Hassan's bite model. And like these frameworks for something that is like a undue influence, or like these authoritarian religions or high control groups. I read through this information, and I could definitely find things throughout each of those 4 points, like the BITE model. I'm going to forget what they're called right now.
Behavior,
information control,
emotional.
We're messing up. Please go look up Steve Hassan and the BITE model and his books on that, because it's very informative.
Just take a look. It's great. It's really helpful.
And I don't think that I don't think every religion falls under these things. Not every religion or faith community falls strictly into these cult these parameters that he's put out. When I read through it, I found several things here and there. But when I read through it and I hear from people who are former Jehovah's Witnesses, like, it is practically a guidebook.
Right.
That's how I feel about it.
No, I agree.
Extremely harmful. And I think that as far as if we they have those tiers of harmful religions in the world, like I do see it as one of the most harmful for a personal, someone's personal well-being, which I think it just needs to get out there more. I think, and the less fear there are from people who are still inside the group to talk to people and just kind of just crack that door a little bit about questioning what they've been told. Like, there's a big opportunity there for people, even if as looking at somebody who's maybe on the street doing their I can't remember what it's called, about pioneering, right?
Oh, yes,
So people
pioneering,
who
yes, that's when
we
you're
all
like
know the people who knock on the doors, and like
uh-huh.
I think mostly now since COVID, they're kind of standing out with their stands and things like that, right? Like they
They
have
just
pamphlets.
started back door to door, so they were
Okay,
doing everything like phone calls, they would write, they do emails, they do letter writing and
right.
stuff, but now that they're allowed to go back door to door, they're now back to standing on the street corners and knocking on, people's houses,
So would
doors.
you say for, people in our audience who I think everybody's had some experience with it, but of course going
You've
forward
had to
there's going
have
to
a
be
Jehovah's Witness
more.
come to your door.
I know. Like what would you say is like a good approach for that as somebody who's maybe is a
Whew.
pioneer, is they're on that doorstep and they show up at the door of somebody who's a skeptic or, an atheist or agnostic or whatever. Um what would you kind of say, like what would be something that would be helpful or maybe kind of start to change their thoughts about something?
That's a really good
It's a huge question
question.
and I didn't prepare you.
It
I didn't give
is.
you this
No,
ahead of
that's
time.
no, that's okay. And I've thought about it so many times because there's so many times I thought like, oh, I hope they come to my door and
Yeah.
I'm just gonna lay into them with all my biblical knowledge. That's gonna learn them really good. And I try to think back to who I was as a person and what would who could connect with Rion.
Right.
And I kind of feel like if you could break the barrier between them and the governing body, because what the governing body teaches is different than what the Bible teaches. So, I mean, if you really know your Bible and you know how their Bible is mistranslated with certain things, you could find things to hone in. Well, why does it say, like, why specifically does it say that? But okay, for instance, why are women judges? Women are queens, women are rulers
Mm.
back in biblical times. Why is it that you don't allow women to like have positions of authority? Find something that you wouldn't mind having because if you're going to have an uncomfortable conversation, like don't do
Yeah.
it. But if there's something that you feel you could generally connect, just continue asking. Don't just accept the ask, go deeper with them. And
Right.
if you truly just want to like, because you don't want anything to do with them, like you never want them coming back, you could just say, how do you feel about how your organization is handling child SA accusations?
Right.
So you could do, so if you are not sure how you feel on that day, do one or the other. When you ask those questions, really go deep with them and really make them think about it, or just go hardcore and see how they feel about what's happening and what they're hiding, what secrets
Right.
they don't even know about because they're not allowed to. They're not allowed to
Right.
listen to the news about them. They're not allowed to hear that there's even accusation. They don't even want to know there's accusations, let alone that they've lost court cases and
Right.
had to pay out to victims, that they've lost I don't even know if they know that they've lost their tax exempt status in Norway because of all the CSA that's been going on.
Yeah.
And
This
they
is
almost lost it in Australia. They still might, I'm not sure.
it's honestly it's a huge, like it's a way bigger problem than I think people realize maybe that aren't following along with the story. And I think that anybody who's like how they can talk to all the different things that we should be aware of that's going on in that community, because like it's important. It's really important.
It really is. I mean, I tell people all the time, I kind of feel bad with how often I just bring it up in general conversation that I was an ex-Jehovah's Witness, because I just feel like people need to know some of this stuff that they're up to. And lo and
Right.
behold, a lot of people don't know. And they're like, oh my gosh, I would have never, they seem like such nice people.
Yeah.
I'm like,
Yeah,
like
definitely.
they are nice people. This
I
isn't
agree.
necessarily about the individual
Yeah.
people. This is about
No.
what the organization is doing to vulnerable people who don't know any better.
Right.
That's the difference. They don't understand what's happening to them.
Right. Oh, I feel like I said, we could like there's so way
Oh
too
yeah,
there's so much on this, and I wish like
tons.
there is a lot of content. You making content on it. There's other people who are making content on it. So like if this is something that people are curious about, because I think if you're not from the Jehovah's Witness, I think it's good to educate yourself on it.
Yeah.
But also if you're somebody who's maybe watching this and like you've been told not to watch this, like there's more
Yeah.
stuff to learn.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah,
this is just the tip. Trust me, this is just the
it's the
tip.
tip of the iceberg. Yeah.
Oh, mama, if you only knew if you were allowed to just look, because you're not allowed to, but if you just gave yourself permission to just ask yourself questions,
Right.
that's like
Yep.
the gate. Asking questions is like the gateway drug
Right. I know.
to leaving Christianity.
I can confirm this as well. Yeah, it's curiosity is probably the greatest sin, I think, across a lot of these kind of groups. I
I
think it's
think
to be curious.
curiosity cured the cat. I don't
Yeah.
think it killed the cat. I
Can
think
we
it
get that on a
cured the
t-shirt?
cat.
That's our new t-shirt.
Honestly, because I feel like really that I can't tell you how I tell people all the time how cathartic it is for me to be able to make these videos and like have these realizations. And then I tell somebody like, oh my God, I just learned this about the Bible. And they're like, holy crap. I didn't
Right.
know that. Like that just made sense to me. And that's just honestly, that's just like the coolest feeling. I enjoy it
Right.
so much. Sorry, a little toot toot.
No, I love that.
Toot
I love
toot.
that. If you are watching us right now and you are interested in calling in and talking to myself or Ryan, maybe you're an ex-Jehovah's Witness, or maybe you just want to call in and get some more intel on what the whole big story is.
Right.
You can call in at 512-991-9242, and we do have some calls on the line, so we should probably get into that pretty soon here.
Oh, snap.
Before we get into calls, though, we always want to take some time to shout out our patron of the week. So one of the best ways to support us here at Truth Wanted is through Patreon. And every week we try to take some time and shout out one particular supporter. So this week's patron of the week is Maxxxxxxxxxxxxxxwell Carlisle. And I was told to emphasize the Maxxxxxxxxxxxwell Carlisle. Thank you so much for your support. And if anyone else is interested in supporting us, that is one of the best ways to get involved in what we do here at the Atheist Community of Boston. All right, how are you feeling about getting into some calls?
I'm good, but I was wondering, does that mean I have to say ExXtian Erin?
Okay, it's a fair question. Very fair question. First of all, for all those Greek enthusiasts out there, I am fully aware that my name is not proper Greek. I wrote it when I was first deconverting and I didn't understand. So technically it's short for ex-Christian Erin. And so the extra X is completely arbitrary, but I have left it in because that's what I started with. And I constantly joke that if I ever start an OnlyFans account, I'll already have my name. But
I like it.
I don't think it's happening anytime soon.
You already got it right.
And if it does happen, it'll be announced on a Thursday.
Oh, that's right. Okay.
Okay.
To that one.
Tune in on Thursday nights for our very favorite show, Secular Sexuality. Anyway, let's get into some calls here. We are going to be talking to Mr. Enigma. Him, calling in from New York and claiming that he has proof of God. Mr. Enigma.
Yeah, I got.
Hi, thanks for waiting.
Hi.
So, yeah, I've got proof of God.
Okay, let's hear it.
Say it's proof. So it's proof. It wouldn't. I wouldn't say it's so much proof as it is evidence.
Okay.
You know, I think it's pretty good. I think it's got a lot of subtext to it.
Hit me. Let's hear it.
I'm gonna hit you with 2 anagrams. Okay. 2 anagrams.
Okay.
Why? But first, I'm gonna ask you a question. Why is dog God spelled backwards?
Oh no.
Why?
I don't know.
I'm going to answer the age. I've discovered the age-old mystery as to why God is dog spelled backwards or frontwards or however you want to say it. Because God ain't nothing but man's best friend.
Oh, strong disagree here. That's my best friend sitting right there. I don't know if people who are just listening later on the podcast, I've got my little furry friend right behind me there. She's definitely literally been there a lot more times than God has ever been. I can talk to her. She'll make expressions back to me. I can hear her when she sneezes or scratches at something. Evidentially, she is a lot more here. And the proof is very simple. She's right there. So I don't know. What's your next best proof?
I got another one. But can I make a reply to that comment though?
Sure.
Your last comment? But don't you think, like, if God were, like, if there was, like, if everyone just had, like, a mini Jesus following them around, or like a mini God following them around, granting whatever wishes they wanted, like, then God would become our slave and our prisoner, and he wouldn't be free to be himself around us and with us. You know, and it'd basically be the situation of Genie and Aladdin, you know? Like, poof, what do you need? Poof, what do you need? Poof, what do you need?
That kind of sounds like a him problem and not a me problem. He could just create a thing where he shows up once a year in a way that would be evidence for the entire human race. And he doesn't follow me around every single day or grant any wishes, so to say. So there's, I think that this is a never-ending conversation. We can talk about what would be good convincing, what evidence or not. But I think that ultimately what we're saying right now is that we need something that is going to be more concrete than just like a feeling or just this idea. But so I would like to hear your proof. What has convinced you?
I'm very convinced. Yeah,
hang on. First of all, there is a delay when we're talking. Obviously, we're talking like intercontinentally. So I do want to hear from you because this is a show where we want to hear about what you believe and why you believe. So we have talked lots about why we don't believe. So please tell me, what is your reason for your belief?
My belief is that I've had a lot of spiritual experiences. I've had a lot, and by spiritual, I mean, you know, that which is of another that which is otherworldly, that which I can't explain with my 4 or 5 cardinal senses.
It cannot be explained.
Which I don't believe that which. Right, yeah, it can't be explained by by my mind. It can't be explained by my conscious awareness. It can't be explained away by my sense of taste or touch or smell or hearing or sight.
How did you go about deciphering whether this was something that was completely outside of your senses? Because I've heard a lot of people's spiritual experiences, and from most of my understanding about it is that it is maybe an indescribable kind of feeling that they've had, but ultimately there's nothing substantial outside of it that could be like that is inexplainable outside of our 5 senses, whether it's an imagery or a feeling or something about that. So can you please kind of go into more detail about that?
Sure, yeah. Well, just to illustrate before I get into it, I will say to kind of bring up a scripture where to quote a verse in the Christian Bible, Paul was talking about when he was taken up to the third heaven, that he said, "In the body or out of the body, I know not." He just knew that he was taken up to the third heaven. So I had this. I went to heaven. And I had this trip to heaven, and I remembered, so I have to kind of back up and preface it by saying, by the time I got home that evening from being in heaven, I didn't remember the whole day, except for the going over the bridge to get to the college that I was visiting that day.
Okay. And how did you...
I was really...
Yeah, I understand. Like I've heard these experiences. I mean, I've had them myself. They're indescribable at times, and you know, more real than real.
You forgot the whole day of time.
How did you? First of all, how did you distinguish that you were not sleeping
this morning?
How did you, Mr. Enigma? She said she forgot what she ate this morning. Understandable. I mean, time lapse. Okay, it's a thing. Did you have somebody that was sitting with you that also was recording the time that you were mentally not there? And how did you
recording the time? But they were supposedly with me.
Supposedly, that's
when
pretty.
We left. I remember the morning when they left with me. We were spending the whole day together. They left with me, and when I arrived home, they were still with me in the car. And in the car, probably right around when I get into my house is when my memory starts. But so I slowly regained the time of being in heaven over the years.
Okay, I understand. Have you ever taken any time to like listen to people's stories about doing certain substances? Like, I have heard many stories, many stories that I have heard about people who have used different substances, which are a physical chemical thing that are known to alter the states of consciousness.
Yeah.
And the explanations sound very similar. There is a loss of time. There's an ineffability about the experience. Lots of people will explain it as more real than real. Ultimately, there's no like any way to like veridically verify that these things didn't just happen inside of your mind. So it sounds like you had a very similar experience, which I'm sure was fantastic and very interesting for you. But what about your experience would convince anyone outside of that? Someone who didn't experience it.
Isn't that just enough for you? Then, why does anybody else need to know if God is like? You have an experience, God exists. I'm happy for you. Good for you. Like, have a great day. Does that?
I wouldn't even say I know God exists. I don't necessarily believe my trip to heaven was real.
Congratulations. That's awesome.
I don't necessarily, I'm just saying I had this experience. Remember a sunset without a sunrise without a sun. I remember going across going across a bridge, then going across where the flowers like kind of followed the car as we were driving by, and then all of a sudden I was walking up a stairway with a stairway made out of water with an angel by my side.
Sounds trippy,
dude. Did you actually meet God?
Yeah.
Did you actually meet God?
I met one of his I met his sensei, his karate instructor. You'll meet him too one day. He's just the guy trimming the hedges.
All right. You know what would make Mr. Enigma? I think one thing that would make this like a more convincing tale that you're telling us here would be if like there was any kind of information that we were given during this fantastical adventure that you went on, that maybe would be some sort of tidbit of information that we don't actually know here already. Because right now you're telling me about this like gorgeous experience you had over this like watery stair steps and like wonderful. I'm sure it was really, really like a great experience. And I have no doubt that people have these experiences all the time, whether it's under something or asleep, or I think that the mind is a very interesting and fascinating thing, and we can do all sorts of things. It sounds like everything that you're describing is something that I can imagine myself. So unless there was like something about your experience, whether it's like information that you could have brought back, that could have been like some sort of evidential thing that would give us new information about something, like maybe the cure for cancer, or like, the codes to change something about our world that would reverse climate change. I don't know, something that would be fantastical, that it would be like no other explanation other than you were given it by some sort of higher deity. That would be really, really interesting for me. But right now, it just sounds like you're telling me this really cool dream that you had, and there's no way for me to verify it.
Would you like to hear?
Absolutely, I would.
That might help bring about world peace.
No, I would like you to give me information that is not just subjective.
Is it because your stock portfolio is surrounded by stuff that supports war? You don't want to hear something that might bring about world peace? Hello.
No. I'm all about hearing people's different ideas for things, but unless you're going to give me something that's like actually objective information that will change something, it's not that interesting.
I can give you more proof of God.
No, your story's not that interesting. I'm gonna just let Ryan talk here for a minute because I've been talking for like 10 minutes. This isn't that interesting to me.
But I think these experiences are supposed to be personal, and I think that's really the problem with religion right now, is that it's everybody's business. Like what you believe like has to be dictated by somebody else, and I don't think that's how spirituality or religion was supposed to be. It's supposed to be what suits you, what fits you. And if what fits you is going up some watery steps to meet like some dude who teaches
some
God,
sensei.
Yeah, like that's dope as AF. Like that's so freaking cool.
Yeah.
Like damn, I wish I had that. It would be cool to experience, but I don't, and that's okay too.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's absolutely fine to have your own personal spiritual experiences without the need to prove to anybody else what works for you. Like I'm not really sure what to say beyond that.
Right.
I've had some really cool experience. I've had some really good orgasms. Like, if you want to talk about it, like maybe we could talk about that on Thursday.
But I want to know how your orgasm is going to change the world and why it's got to be everyone else's business.
I think that purity culture has really hurt a lot of people. So if we could stop teaching all this really bad rhetoric around our bodies being these weapons of mass destructions, I'm talking to you, like, ladies, then maybe the world would be a better place and we would have less
aggression. A proposition.
Sex could fix the world.
I was just going to say that. I was just going to say, here's a proposition. Stop teaching purity culture. Maybe we'll have some world peace. Right. I don't see why that's any different than the story we're hearing now. Mr. Enigma, I'll bring you back on for another moment here if you have any final things to say. But otherwise, I think we're just going to move on to the next call because I'm still not convinced based on your story.
Right on, excellent. Have a good one.
Bye.
Okay. Well, thank you for calling in, and I appreciate you waiting on the line.
Thank you.
Have a good night, guys.
Good night.
You too. Thank you. Appreciate it.
I do like hearing people's fantastic experiences, and like you had said, like there's all sorts of these.
I have spiritual friends who do like dabbling and they see sign, and that, like, I'm fat, like, that's great. I'm so glad that it works for you. It doesn't work for me, and it shouldn't have to. And again, like, that's my issue with like Christianity. Like, this has to work in this particular way, and if it doesn't, something's wrong with you, and that's not cool.
Yeah, and just this like prescriptivism that we need to, like, now that I had this experience, whether it, like, you know, somebody climbing to the top of a mountain and then having this experience, and now I need everyone else to fall in line and to confirm my own experience for me. Like, whatever. Okay, so anyway, Ryan, I love your point about purity culture, and I think you should definitely come back sometime to be on one of our other programs. If you haven't heard, we do have some other programs here at the ACA, at the Atheist Community of Austin. So if you've not been paying attention this last week, we're going to have a short clip now where we're going to see what's been going on.
Had one particular horror story where the couple had bought the doll and bonded to her, you know, oh, we love her, you know, Kara. Or we don't, not Kara, I'll use another name.
Okay.
If we had an election tomorrow, the current government would be pretty much obliterated. So we are kind of shifting back to the middle.
Well, we're a world-class exporter of crazy. You know, like we're very good at that. I'm not surprised.
Does the arrival of the heifers in Israel set in motion the coming of the Messiah, or the return of Jesus, as Christians believe?
Do you mind if I try to answer that, Scott? I think I might be able to. Let me just check my notes here real quick. No. You, a professing Christian with a repentant heart, Thomas, still sin. And since all sins are the same in the eyes of God, kind of sounds like all of that is what you would affectionately call bull.
I don't know how you got this so wrong, but you are now on mute.
You're just saying
and you know who's not saying to me anymore? You.
All right, so we're going to jump back into some calls here. But before we do that, I just want to say that if you are looking at other ways that you want to get involved in supporting our mission here at the Atheist Community of Austin, a couple of ways here. Sorry. First one is, we mentioned the Patreon. The second one would be the YouTube membership. You can see below here that we have memberships in the tab there. That's a good way to kind of get involved, and a kind of a low minimum monthly amount you can get involved with the membership. And then also all of our programs that we have here are part of our fundraiser. So the Atheist Community of Austin is a nonprofit organization. So if you are wanting to, and I mean, we hope you would like what we do here and you want to support us, you can hit that little fundraiser button and donate directly through that, because YouTube won't take any of it because we are part of a nonprofit. So thank you everyone who does support what we do here. And all of us, everybody who works with the show, we're all volunteers, and we do this just out of the love of our hearts. So appreciate everything that everyone does.
The love of God.
Yeah, there's that empty hole that we have is filled with nonprofit work.
Right, exactly. Help the masses. God help the masses.
That's right. I mean, we want to like build community here, right? So it's like there's a lot of different ways, and there's a lot of good communities out there that are doing it. So like anybody who's kind of out there and looking for ways to get involved, like there's so many different things that you can do. Like not everything is having a call-in show or like talking to people live or having these like kind of debate conversations. We're always looking for people to volunteer, like people who are good at tech stuff. I'm horrible at tech stuff. The only reason why this show happens because we have an amazing crew. So if you have any of those kind of like talents and you want to get involved, there's lots of behind the scenes stuff that we could really appreciate people getting involved with. Anyway,
there's so much tech stuff to know nowadays. Like,
yeah,
oh my gosh,
it's a lot.
Help me.
It's a lot. And speaking of tech, here's my stellar segue. Technology has always been a hot button issue for a lot of doomsday kind of predictions. I had mentioned earlier, like the advent of chipped credit cards was a big one. I know, like, and like for some reason, like the barcode, Mark of the Beast stuff, like this was a constant for me in my own denomination. I know that the Jehovah's Witness had other kind of things that they would focus on, but we put a poll question in the comments about whether you believe it is the end times, and we have a caller. So I would love to talk to Thomas, calling in, a fellow Canadian. He says he definitely thinks we are in the end times. Thomas, please inform us on why we are in the end times.
Yeah, I think the Bible has a whole bunch of evidence to suggest it. I'll start by, do you guys know how old the oldest person is that lives today? What's the oldest person?
Last I checked, it was somebody who was like 120-ish.
Yeah, I thought it was 120. I was like, damn.
Yeah, so after the flood, God said to Noah, he said, there will come a time when the spirit of man will the spirit of God will no longer abide in man, and the lifespan will be 120. Then I'll jump to this. In Revelations, you guys believe in climate change, right?
It's nothing to believe. It just is, yeah.
Right. I mean,
it just is. Yeah.
I don't believe in that.
So in Revelations, it says that
Thomas.
Yeah.
I'm just gonna put you on mute for just 1 second. Your background is like really, really windy. I'm not sure if you are outside or if there's somehow you could kind of get into a more secluded area where we can hear you a little bit better. It's not too bad, but it is pretty windy. Just letting you know, it's a little hard to hear you.
Can you hear me better now?
Yeah, you're coming in clear. There's just a little bit of background, but it's okay. Let's go on to this Bible prophecy.
Okay, sorry. So in Revelations, it says that the sun will scorch the earth and dry up the Euphrates River. Have you guys seen the Euphrates River lately?
Yes.
I probably could Google search the Euphrates River. I mean, I don't know.
Yeah. In the last decade, it has dried up. It's done. We've seen this in the last decade. Even 2016, if you Google it in 2016, it was a beautiful river, and now it's dried. And Revelation.
You don't think that there was rivers that dried up back in biblical times? There weren't rivers that stopped flowing back then also? I mean, rivers stop flowing all the time.
I'm not going to say that you're wrong in some of these things.
Right.
Yes, people lived to 120, usually tops. Yes, rivers dried up. What is to say that like
I thought the 120 years was the amount of time God was going to allow wickedness on the earth, and that's why he was giving him 120 years to build the ark. It wasn't the limit.
Right.
Of days.
I think it's both. If I'm recalling, I could be wrong. Someone can correct me, but like I think
Thomas at the actual evidence, y'all.
Look at the actual biblical evidence here. I think Thomas is right that there is somewhere in the Bible where it does mention that man will only live to be 120 years old. What is to think that that wasn't just the oldest person that had ever lived like 6,000 years ago anyway? But regardless, I'm trying to say that like these events, I'm not going to argue that some of these things happen, that even a broken clock is right twice a day. What about these things are different, or like why is it this famine and not the famine that happened 700 years ago or 6,000 years ago or 10,000 years ago? Right. These things happen all the time, and we've had
Joseph
lots of
had to flee into Egypt. There was there a famine then? I mean, when
what is the difference between like it being a biblical prophecy that's a 1 in 1 million chance of happening, or if it's just a common kind of commentary on what happens in the world? Why is this particular like famine or drought more convincing to you than the ones that have happened in time immemorial and way before we started documenting?
Yeah, no, I know for sure, but I'm just pointing out the fact that it says the lifespan will be 120, and then they nailed the Euphrates River right on, and they say it'll happen in the end times, right? That's the point. Lots of rivers have dried up, but the Euphrates River hasn't dried up, and Revelation says...
Well, I haven't seen any rivers turn to blood yet either. So it's like you're gonna like I do hate this expression, but it does feel like it's a case of cherry picking. Like I'm gonna look on this big diagram, I'm gonna find the one thing that fits, that I can fit into the thing that's happening now, and I'm gonna call that a prophecy. I think my biggest problem with most of the prophecies in the Bible is that they're so vague, and I could think of 100 ways off the top of my head how I could improve any of these prophecies. So yeah, the Euphrates is it's an area of the world that has a lot of extreme weather patterns, I'll just say. Like that's the reason why they had floods and then famines. Like it's an area of the earth that does that. It's not really that what's the word I'm thinking? It's not that fantastical. It's not a really supernatural kind of claim to say that there's going to be a famine or a drought at this time. Why not mention the river in China? The Bible says nothing about China. Like, why not something else?
More specific.
Because it's a Middle Eastern river. But Google 1986 Lake Nyos, Cameroon, blood red. It has happened. But
and it was actually shown to be blood, not just a mineral in the water.
It was oxidized. It was iron,
bacteria,
right? But it turned blood red.
Algae.
Yeah,
blood red. That's the point.
Okay, so
but
my question. No, I understand where you're going with this. So like there's a lot of like these physical signs that you see in the world. So where does this end for you? What is the step in which you're going to say, okay, this is what I'm expecting to happen next, and if it doesn't happen, like where is your marker here for when you will be proven? Yeah, or like when is it proven wrong for you? Yeah, is there anything that could happen in the future here that will change your mind about whether these are actually prophecies coming true, or if they are just happenstances around the world and the Bible is making commentary on that just like we do?
I mean, I would hope it doesn't happen. I'm not excited about it. I mean, the Bible says you shouldn't be excited about it, but I mean, it certainly appears that way. I'm not saying it is what it is. I'm saying that it certainly looks that way, right?
Yeah, I do get that. I do get that. I was also trained, I would say, to see the things around me in the world to be evidence and to confirm to this belief I had. But then it's important to know where your markers are for when you would change your mind. So I think even if you don't have an answer now, I would just say, like, to take away from the call, like, what would be something that would happen that would change your mind on whether these are prophecies or not? It's just something to think about, because otherwise you can look at anything that's going on in the world and, make it fit into it, because the Bible is a very vague book. I mean, I don't know if you think that. I think a lot of us have come to think that. And even though a lot of religious people will say that there's different ways to interpret it and that, but what is something that would be your marker for knowing when you can, or for deciding if you've been wrong on something? So I don't know if you have an answer right now, but that's just maybe something to think about, right? Do you have anything to comment about that?
No, but I think it's really important that you figure out how you feel about that at what point, because I wish my grandparents would have asked themselves that question, while they were telling me, like, oh, I'm going to be here to see Armageddon. Well, guess what? You're not, but you spent your whole life telling others about it and that it was right around the corner, and now you're gone. And am I going to be the same? Am I going to be, going to my grave at 90 years old going, well, damn, I spent my entirety of my life worried about this cataclysmic end, and just life as usual. I kind of wish I would have been able to get some of those years back, but at least I have it for now. And I hope that maybe through your, what you just told him, Erin, that maybe he could maybe do the same.
Yeah, no, I mean, if it doesn't happen, it doesn't happen, right? But I got two more really good ones. But first, I want to say, you guys probably know this. You were Christians. What Peter says in 2 Peter, where he says about there will come scoffers in the end days. He says they'll scoff at one
of my favorite, most common things. Sorry, Thomas, I just interrupted because that's a very common one that we hear about. Yeah, in the end, there'll be scoffers and people who are tickling of the ears or something like that, right?
Yeah, but what the point is what he says, right? So he says 1 would be the age of the earth, 2 would be Noah's flood, and 3 is what you guys said when I was listening, is we've been waiting for this forever, right? When Jesus, we've been saying this forever. And then he goes on to say that a day is like 1,000 years to come. But then he says they'll pervert the gospel or the epistles of Paul, right? And if we've seen this, like so many people contort the words of Paul, especially Christians, right? They use his words to persecute others and be judgmental.
You know what? If I was going to start a religion, Thomas, if I was going to start a religion, I would make sure that one of the things that I wrote in my new book was you cannot change my book.
Right. Don't.
And also people who criticize this are the bad guys.
Oh, so you mean what the Bible does?
I'm just take that idea, and I'm not saying that the Bible, I'm not making any claims about the Bible. It's just a thought about these things. I think it is good to look into, the scholarship about Bibles and who wrote what and when and why. But the idea of like, what is the scripture? What is this verse doing? What is the point of this? And it's not always
context of it. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, that is a really common one that gets thrown at skeptics, is that, people who are scoffers are going to, they're going to be the ones who are burning forever. But understanding a little bit more about psychology, or like how humans interact and how people can write things that are polemical against the people who disagree with you. It takes the sting out of that a lot. So, I mean, I appreciate that you're looking into it. I appreciate that you're reading and you're trying to understand it the best you can. I would just say, keep looking and think about that marker, I would say, of how would you falsify your own belief with this, that it is the end times.
I will for sure. I got two last ones, okay?
Actually, no, Thomas, actually, I really do appreciate you calling, and I appreciate you waiting. We do actually have some other calls to get to tonight. Please, though, if you want, call in again, because I think like you're very nice to talk to, and I would love to talk to you about this more. And if I'm hosting in the future, I would love for you to call back in and tell me if you had thought about that question a little bit. Ooh, and give me what your marker would be to kind of falsify your own beliefs. But drive safely, or wherever you are. Be safe, and have a good rest of your night. And happy Thanksgiving, fellow Canadian. Yes, I know we're weird in Canada. We have our Thanksgiving this weekend, so it's a thing. It's a whole thing. We like to do things differently.
It's a whole thing. That's
right. All right. So I don't know, Ryan, were you convinced by any of that?
Oh gosh, no, you couldn't. God would literally have to convince me. That would be what convinced me.
But I can feel for the anxiety of it. Right?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
You have a book, and you already kind of believe the main core propositions of this book, and then it says that like you'll know this is true if it rains, and like that's a pretty broad kind of stroke to put on like how I'm going to prove this.
Right.
And like, yeah, famine and droughts are not like a common thing, but they're not supernatural. They do happen.
Right. These are cyclical things, unfortunately, that happen from time to time with nature.
Yeah.
Just how it works.
And like, if we can zoom back a little bit and like not just read from the historical account of the Bible, as they would, like, I'm putting myself back onto like the worldview. But like look at the Earth as like an entire, like the whole geological history and stuff. Like we have lots and lots of records of these horrible,
right. How many times
cataclysmic events that happened with weather.
I had no idea how many times like the Earth has just like rebooted.
Yeah.
several times it's rebooted, and I had no freaking idea.
Yeah.
Because we're like young Earth. Is that what they're called? Young Earth creationists.
Yeah, young Earth
Like
creationism.
they thought the
yeah.
Earth is only 6,000 years old. So when I found out that they're, oh my God, I was like, wait, hold up.
It's
what?
It's a paradigm shift, right? It's like, okay,
oh
so
my.
yeah,
you feel like this. You feel like this tiny little teensy little speck.
Which can be good and bad, right? Like
right.
Nothing matters, or like nothing matters.
Well, yeah, that's true. That's true. When you think about like what we can do to cause issues with our climate and whatnot. So then you do think like, oh gosh, we are this little tiny blip, but could we make this huge catastrophe happen because, we don't do what we need to do?
That's a whole different thing that like we didn't even touch on, is like this whole idea of, I don't think the Jehovah's Witnesses are doing it too much, but like this whole forcing of the end times thing that's happening. Like it's bizarre to me that you would think that you have this, this creator of the world on omnipresent, omniscience God who's going to take care of everything. So we don't need to. There's like this dual belief happening where you think God's going to handle it, but also I need to do things. I'm going to elect this, and I'm going to do these things to try to force the end times. Like it's a very real thing that is happening all over the place. But as like I said, it's a whole other can of worms.
Yeah, it is. But Jehovah's Witnesses, like they're always kind of forcing their hand, and they always seem to feel like something that they do could cause a reaction that will set into motion God's plan. So they do feel like they have this effect on, they really do on their own members, but they feel like they affect the world, which is a bit like strange.
I will say, before we get to our next caller, I really want to talk to our next caller, but I will say, I didn't even know what was going on too much in the Jehovah's Witness world when I was a Christian. Really didn't. And then once I was like kind of going through my
radar,
they do kind of fly under the radar, but when I kind of tuned into what was going on and like the actual, like there really is this illusion that they give themselves that they are kind of running the show. But for the most part, the reality is that most people have no idea what they're doing.
Just a bunch of
what they're doing in Kingdom Hall. I don't know what the
dudes. They're a bunch of bumbling old white dudes who like wouldn't know how to use Twitter if they try. They're so far removed, and they continuously try to take this old, this biblical text, and they're
what is it?
Into modern day life.
8 old white dudes.
Yes,
not all white.
There's one. They do have one black man now.
Diversity matters a little bit.
Diversity.
Diversity in New York or something. Anyway. Yeah. Let's get into our next call. We've got a little bit of time here. Let's talk to Jamie calling in from Texas, and Jamie says it is not the end times, and it aggravates him when people say it is. Hi, Jamie. I think I agree with you.
Hello. Thanks again for taking my call. And again, I'm paranoid that people are going to get sick of my voice because I keep calling into different shows.
Your voice. No, I appreciate you calling in. Your voice is always oddly soothing. So.
Okay. Well, so yeah, I actually get properly aggravated when people say it's the end times for several reasons. Oh, and a little side note: I have a personal beef with the Jehovah's Witness Church, which I could go into, but that's another call.
Ooh, could you now?
So first of all, how many Armageddons have we survived? Well, there was 2000 and 2012, and then
there's a Google. I think there's a wiki doc on this. Actually, I don't know. I have to pull it up. But yeah, it's a lot.
So I'm kind of bored of Armageddons. They seem to be extremely mundane. Like the worst you get is us. It rains out. Oh well, guess it's the end of the world. But that's more the fringes. The people like, it's going to end next week, promise. They're either hucksters or delusional, and that's fine. But when we come to the more serious sort of sects, they're like, the end times are coming and we must prepare, and therefore, it's usually, from my standpoint as an atheist and skeptic, a arrogant, selfish excuse to essentially big up the in-group, do whatever the heck you like, and screw everyone else because the world's ending anyway. So why not use all the petrol that you like. Why not rip up the ozone layer? Why not be bigoted, horrible, and terrible and indulge in every single thing because Jesus said so? And it just really, really annoys me. And then there's a last point, which is the cynicism lets people give up. And they don't realize, as Stephen Fry said, like he was asked, where would you go if you had a time machine? And he said, people think, oh, I'd go and be a Regency dandy, or I'd go and meet Albert Einstein. No, I want to live now, because now is the best time. It is, despite all things to the contrary. The bad stuff is temporary. We'll get Roe overturned again eventually. We will fight and we will win. Things will get better eventually.
What's a secular version of amen?
Hell yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Oh, just say it. Who cares? God.
Amen. I mean, what does it mean? It means like let it be or let it be so
We
or something.
agree.
We agree. I agree. Yeah, I am feeling everything you said. I love what you said. I agree with that. I think it is so frustrating when you see you can't always 100% say that this is why. You can't know people's motivation, but it sure does seem like it at times that people are claiming that the ends are coming because there's a lack of responsibility there, right? And
yes.
Oh, I feel myself getting all
Congress thing. There was some Congress thing I just posted a video of, but this dude was talking about how he is a steward of the earth.
Yeah, I saw
that.
Yeah.
Dude, if you were a steward of the earth, then that would mean you would be an environmentalist. You would take care of the earth. You would see it as precious resources that we need to sustain ourselves.
Right.
But instead, you see it as something you own, because they think everything is property. So they own women, they own the planet, they own children. Everything's about what they can control. It has nothing to do with wanting to take care of it. They don't take care of women, and they were supposedly the head of the household. They still beat people and didn't give us our rights, right? We had to demand that stuff. It wasn't just given to us. Psh, stewards of my butthole. Sorry.
Keep going. You got this.
I'm sure there's someone out there that would be happy to be paid to be a steward of someone's butthole, but anyway, each their own.
We don't kink shame. We're not going to kink shame on you, all right? All right.
Oh, no kink shaming here.
No,
probably on Thursday. But the one thing
Thursday somewhere.
I don't want to take too much of your time, because there's not much discussion other than just backpatting like, end time's not happening. Yeah, I agree. But I will say this. It is easy to start falling, not to bring it a little bit more broad. It's very easy to get sucked into cynicism and despondency because of short-term losses that are big, the problems. Overturning of Roe, the dangers of the new Supreme Court, global warming, price inflation. But remember, the humanity has gone through plagues and wars and genocides, and there are very few things that are actually going to end us as a species. We are surprisingly resilient. And the more we fight and the more we cling together and help each other, the better that future's going to be. So don't give up. If life puts you down, don't get despondent. Roll up your sleeves and chin check the motherfuckers.
That's right.
Honestly.
So good. Yeah, I agree with you, because all of us adding our voice to the chorus makes a difference. It really does. It makes a huge difference. And that's why I choose to share my stories. That's why I listen to other people's stories, because I'm curious about what they've been through. And, do we share trauma?
Right.
We're trauma bonding,
No, I so appreciate those words, Jamie. And I agree. It is really hard sometimes. And I doom scroll sometimes. I get a little bit like, oh my gosh, how are we gonna pull through this? How are we gonna? And I mean, sometimes it's good to be aware of what's going on around the world, but sometimes you just gotta put the phone down and go for whatever is soothing to you. Go for a walk, go realize, what are we fighting for? Go call your your best friend, call your mom if you can call your mom. I say that with an asterisk. Remember what are we doing here? We are in this. It's a it's a marathon, right? Like, I hate to be cheesy, but like
Yes.
the end goal, it's a long process. And like, I think that what we see now is like oh God, I hate when I pull to my old Christian, the groans of whatever, the groans of something, the changing, right? Like there's a shift happening, and like people are sick of it, and there's, you know, yeah, I agree with you what you said. Like, there are things worth fighting for. You can't give up. You can't get cynical. You can't throw in the towel.
It's not
like,
futile.
It's not. No. And if you feel that way, take a break. You know, catch your breath. Do something that you know makes you feel good, and like
do some grounding or something.
Yeah, and then get back in there, because like we're in this big thing together, and like it's growing. And as much as we feel defeated at times, like it's every single time I check in with like the, you know, Pew Research or whatever, like there's things changing, and so that's exciting. Baby. Yeah.
Two last quick things before I go, and then this really is it for this call, at least.
Hey.
I'll be back. One, the information age has brought the worries of the world to us all. We know everything that's going wrong around the world, not just down the street. That's why everything seems to be terrible.
And that's not normal. That was never normal.
Yeah.
Right? No. This is stuff we got to adapt to. This is going to take some evolving, man.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're not used to anything bigger than 200 people, and you're dealing with the whole world's problem. Oh, no, a terrible thing happened in Kuala Lumpur, the worst. Anyway, but on the second thing, and this really is the last point, while it's not going to happen, man, the Book of Revelations is metal as fuck. I'd like to see a beast with 7 heads, upon its head 7 crowns, and in its mouth the words of blasphemy. That sounds awesome.
Yeah, I want to meet this, like, the whore Babylon. She seems cool.
Oh, that's me.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah, it's like
I always love that picture that the woman. Have you seen the picture of the woman riding, like the whore actually riding the 7-headed beast with the horns and stuff? Yeah,
that's I'm sure. Really cool stuff. I don't know. It does seem metal as fuck. And
it's metal. It's like really metal. I need that on a t-shirt.
Yeah, it's a book. Yeah, it's weird. And surprising how much emphasis gets put on that one little, you know, thing at the end, because even as the Bible as a whole, I agree, it's an ancient piece of literature, and there's some like old like poems and all sorts of things. But man, those evangelicals and Jehovah's Witnesses really love that last one.
They like to harp on the bad stuff.
Yeah. Okay, thank you so much for calling in, Jamie.
Thank you, Jamie.
We always appreciate it. Yeah, we always appreciate hearing from you. And I made a prophecy. I said your voice is always oddly soothing, and there he like made like a very soothing statement that like we have things to fight for. So,
right, it's true. I think that he was really remarking on something that I think was important, is that they kind of get you in. Like I said, they kind of make everything just seem like it's always going to be bad. So, what's the point of trying? Because Jehovah's Witnesses, they're not allowed to like speak up about anything. They don't recommend them watching the news, probably because of the CSA like court cases. Them. But also because they don't want them watching the news. Like there's just things they don't want them privy to, and it's not right.
Right,
not right to do that to people.
I think totally. Like there's that part of that information control again, right? Like that bite model, a part of the tendencies of a high control group is like controlling the information that we have. And then like the other side of it is kind of what Jamie was talking about, like this absolute like being bombarded with information. I think like at times, like he had mentioned like that part of like our evolution as like Homo sapiens, like he had mentioned like groups of up to 200 people. I think that's like what is the common kind of agreement, that like humans are able to sustain and keep relationships with up to about 200 people or something like that, like group sizes. Well, 200 people is a lot smaller than like 8 and however many billion people are on the world. So if you feel overwhelmed by the news that is coming in, like that makes sense. So
no wonder.
And
we weren't meant to like know exactly what was happening in China.
Yeah,
You
and
know,
that's not to
instantaneous. It's just,
yeah,
I mean,
it's
it's
not to
great.
say
It's a
like
hell
we
of a
shouldn't.
tool.
Yeah, it's not to say that we shouldn't care about things, but like doom scrolling's a thing. I've been victim of it before too, and so like
Yeah, baby. Nope.
taking some time to like shut that down and go do
Honey.
something.
I've put myself into
Mm.
like, I think people maybe sometimes get this I don't know, that I give this appearance off that maybe I'm super strong or something. I just want people to understand that it can be super painful and it can be scary at times. You know, I used to believe
Oh
in
yeah.
demon possession and demons following me around, you know, on top of the end of the world coming. So you know, you really put yourself in a little tizzy with all of
Right.
this stuff. And
Yeah.
it's
And if you
very
imagine like
detrimental.
the amount of news coming in, and then you're also trying to take every single like trending topic and make it work in with your worldview of trying to make it make sense in the Book of Revelation. Like, I can see what that's a lot of undue stress, I would think.
Yeah, that's why I did like some of the stuff. I don't even look at Revelation much anymore because well, now that I realize what everything is, I don't really pay too much towards some of that stuff because it's so far removed. I feel like I could kind of almost do the same thing looking at history and write some wild something or other about what was happening at the time.
Yeah,
you know, not trying to be mean, but you're 100
I
years
appreciate
away
what
from
you're
Jesus.
saying, and to use this as an opportunity to like talk about some of the stuff that you've done online. I like to look at the Bible now as ancient stories, right? Like this is actually kind of cool. We have this pretty well preserved piece of literature,
God,
this library of ancient
fantastic.
literature. Yeah, and so like when you look at that,
is.
and like yes, it affects a large portion of the world. But what you actually have is like this literature is like pretty fascinating, and like the different kind of societies it went through and how they even changed it's kind of interesting. And like what was the dating, and like I can see why. I know for myself, I've been out of Christianity for a few years, but like when a really good like informational thing comes up about the writing of some whatever, like that one caller had said, the Second Peter, I'm going to listen to it because it's still really super interesting. But I can look at it now from a state of separation of being like, okay, so this is what some person from like the 2nd century thought was super important, and that's kind of cool because that's a long time ago. And I can
like
also
100 years later plus is
what
did they think? Okay, that's cool. What's
you can
the
read
difference between his 100 and my 1,000? Not much, because I probably have more in front of me than he does, honestly.
Yeah, and like read other ancient history too, or ancient like literature. Read the old Roman like novels, like they're fascinating, and like they really are enlightening. So that's why I wanted to bring
it tie into the Bible because all these cultures are intertwining with each other. So it makes sense. I didn't realize, like, no wonder Paul mentions Zeus and Bacchus and this other stuff, because this is like other important things that are happening at the time. So it makes sense. They weren't so opposed. It wasn't so divided like Christianity kind of is right now.
Yeah, it's not like what the apologists will say to you that there was this,
like,
yeah, it's not.
We understand these gods exist.
There was this whole thing that was happening on its own. Like that's, of course, that's not true. Like in a
vacuum of some.
Yeah, in a vacuum. That's the word I was looking for.
No, it wasn't. It was not in a vacuum.
No,
they all borrowed and crossed each other's paths. And
so if you're having a hard time trying to, like, when you're reading the Bible and you're like, this sounds so like this is it, pick up like a book of the Nag Hammadi library, pick up some ancient Tacitus, like just read anything from the ancient Near East, and you're going to be like, oh wow, this is just how people were kind of thinking at the time. Read one of the other apocryphon of Peter, like read the other ones that almost made it into the Bible. Like the book of Revelation that got into the Bible is not the be all end all of that kind of literature at the time. Like these things will help process that. So I mean, I don't know. I've said this, and I know it's kind of like frustrating. I like the Bible way more now that I'm an atheist.
I do too.
Yeah, it's fascinating.
Yeah, it really is, because you kind of get a glimpse of people at that particular time. What were they going through? What were they thinking? And regardless if, like, for instance, I love Asherah, God's wife in the Bible.
Yeah, you've mentioned lots about like the ancient goddesses, and it's so cool. I didn't know any of that, so
I didn't either until TikTok. But regardless if I believe it or not, that's not the point. The point is I can look at women from thousands of years ago, who were they worshiping? What was their life like? What were their religious practices like? And I can kind of put myself back, like, of course she would have a goddess.
Yeah.
Like, you're giving birth. You need somebody to take care of you. You're going to need ointments. You're going to need stuff for birth pains. I mean, this is what women were doing back in the day.
Right.
Midwives, taking care of people, taking care of the children, everything at the home. That's what, she would hunt. She did everything.
Right.
And because maybe the man wasn't always around, it didn't always, just like they aren't, just like they aren't today.
So let's get into our next. I think we have time for one more. We're getting really close to the end of the show, but let's get into one more caller. We'll see if it has like kind of what to do with what we're talking about here. Sounds like a super interesting topic to me. So I'd like to talk to Lake, I think is the name, Lake from California. They want to talk about the images and models of the world and how they are portrayed as myths. And that is kind of what we were talking about. So, Hi, Lake. Did I say, is that Lake?
Okay.
Hey.
Hi there.
What you thinking?
Yeah, just let me close my door.
Okay.
Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you just fine. It's a little noisy. So if you want to just kind of sit in one place for a second and let us hear you so we can get all your words out here. But yeah, we can hear you just fine.
What?
Yeah, we can hear you. Go ahead. You wanted to talk about images or models of the world and how they're portrayed in myths. That's what I have written down here.
It's it's one of those topics I find pretty interesting. Just for its own sake, in addition to apparently, it's much like, I don't know if you might know how at least, hypothetically, like a language, can shape the way you think, I would imagine.
Yeah. Actually, yeah, I've heard about this. Yeah.
Very similarly, it would seem like, you could call, I'm not sure if you would call a language if it were in terms of images, images in the sense of, you ever, some chemistry at least, boards.
I'm not great at chemistry, so, but yeah, I mean, I kind of
I know what H2O is. Does that help?
But it's been a long time since I was in high school, so I'm not going to remember much, but.
It's an example, image, right? It's not to say it's an appropriate image for, chemistry, but just for the sake of argument, it describes the atoms as a planetary system, whereas maybe if you go in, kind of a little more advanced, I'm not sure who made this image, but it's kind of like a plum pudding or something, or some kind of cloud around that, like a little dot.
Right.
So, that's just a couple examples. Not to say that, they're like that, but it's just something you use to make sense of the world or something.
Right. So you just wanted to kind of get our take on that. I do find the idea of okay, let's see if we're on the same track here, because I'm not sure if we are.
Yeah, because I'm not. Yeah, I need to lean in so I can.
The
listen.
Idea of myths and how there's a commonality in how humans think and how humans communicate ideas and storytelling. Right. I do find that fascinating. I think it kind of is that intersection between psychology and language and culture, and there's a lot to that. Is that are we kind of headed in the same direction here? That there is something eerily similar, how a story that from one part of the world, you can make it make sense to another part of the world through imagery or through, just a different way of telling the story.
There's a lot of commonality with symbolism and certain motifs that are that I've known just now, realizing Sumerian, Greek, a lot of this stuff is universal all over, which I had no idea. So I think it's really cool. So it must be something. something.
Yeah,
that
I
we're
do feel
all
like it's something that is like
thinking.
super interesting, but probably like above my pay grade of
Pay grade?
understanding, because I feel like
Yeah.
as a volunteer, that like
Sorry.
it is like it's one of those areas that I'm actively kind of trying to understand more, right? Because like there is a lot of, like I said, intersections of it, whether it's like language and neurology and cultural and just the common human experiences and common human struggles. Like, I think it's the reason why we do get kind of wrapped up in, you know, common myths, and why things like Jungian psychology is interesting to so many people, and like that the idea of archetypes, and like there are these ways of communicating these ideas, right?
That's
like
cool stuff.
I kind of sit back on this, very agnostic on this whole thing, because I'm still kind of sitting back and seeing like how it makes sense for me too, because I think that's the point of it, is just look at these things and what is it saying to you about this, and how does it help you understand someone else's experience in it. So I think it's not something that we would put under evidentialist kind of information, but it's one of those things we have to confront, that it's a subjective thing, but maybe a subjective thing that we can kind of all understand. Does that?
Yeah.
It sounds as fluffy as I think it does, doesn't it? But I don't know. Do you have any other thoughts about it, Lake?
In terms of like communication, I guess a good one factor could be, I'm diagnosed like on the spectrum. You know what that means?
Oh yeah, yep.
Autistic. So it could come up as like all over the place. So
you're doing just fine. Yeah, don't worry.
You do. I get you.
I kind of wish I at least had a paper I could show you. Whatever.
Hey, okay, so if you want to, I totally get that. Sometimes communicating this way over phone call is like super challenging. So like if you are interested, you can totally email us a picture if you want to like send something else like that. Like, we are here as the show. We are happy to communicate with anybody. If you have a different way of trying to like talk to us or explain something, like go ahead and email us a picture of something that you think would make this make more sense, because explaining it over a phone call is a challenge in itself. So I guess
I mean, I don't really mind if I achieve or not achieve anything. I just at least dip my toes in the water to at least this could be my warm up.
Definitely. I appreciate you calling in. No, you did great. I appreciate you calling in, and like I always kind of want to talk about, like, whenever I see myth in anything, I'm always fascinated, because it can mean so many different things, right? So I appreciate you calling in. Like, did you have anything else to say? Because we are gonna probably wrap it up here. We're right at the end of our show.
Maybe to wrap it up, this first quarter I got finally got my pure math certificate from Maloney College.
Awesome.
That's awesome.
Just this first quarter, mailed to me.
Oh, that's awesome. Thank you. That's great. I'm excited to hear that for you. Yeah. Okay, well, thank you so much for calling in tonight. And definitely, if this was your dipping the toe in the water, give us a call back sometime, and we can carry this conversation on. And if you are interested, if you want to have this, if you want to like drop some more of that information, you can always email us at the email, like us as the host or somebody else from the show will get back to you, and we can kind of see what else is there, if there's another kind of imagery that is better like portrayed for what you're trying to tell us. Our email is truth@atheist-community.org. And for anyone else watching out there, if you have any other questions, comments, concerns, or great ideas, you can email our overall program here at tv@atheist-community.org. There are other ways to communicate with us, and we do our best. We are, like I said, we are volunteers. So, and I'm bad at technology, but I will try to get back to people when it's directed as to Erin. I will do my best. Ryan, how was this for you tonight? Taking some live calls?
So much easier than I thought.
It's just talking to people.
I know. And I've done this so many times, so I really don't know why, but I guess just because it's just a new show. Something new. But yeah, it's been interesting. Thank you, everybody.
Oh, I'm really, really glad that you joined me tonight. I was like so happy that you said yes. And you do work with some other groups and do other kind of stuff similar, right?
I do a lot of stuff.
Okay, so before we get into our outro here, how can our audience find you? What are you all up to these days? And yeah, give us some details, please.
Sure. So if you want to watch any of my videos like deconstruction, I like to talk about doctrine, breaking it down. I like to talk about, like Erin said, I love talking about myths, especially the ones that kind of really were the start. They were like the preamble for the for the Bible. So you can find me on YouTube. I do a lot of content there. Most of it right now is on TikTok. I'm trying to move to YouTube because TikTok likes to censor the bejeebus out of me for some strange reason. You can also find me on Twitter, and yeah, but I'm on a couple YouTube channels. I did send a picture. I don't know if you have it, but I'm at Apostate Coalition. We're doing this new thing where we're trying to get people together from cults to kind of create actually like a hub to kind of keep people up to date what's going on inside of the cults, because people are just more in touch. They're going to know more, Mormons are going to know more what's going on inside of their situation versus me as a Jehovah's Witness. So yeah. And then what else? I think that's it. Oh, Skeptic Haven. Hello, I'm sorry, Skeptic Haven. I'm also a host on that YouTube channel. And then, like I said,
very
Rion
good friends of the show.
Is my So Rion is my Rion Cultastic is my main YouTube channel, and I'm trying, I'm really trying to get like the content there. I want to start like breaking down the Canaanite pantheon and stuff like that. It's just going to take some time. Give me some time, but I promise.
You're doing great.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So you have got lots of stuff all over the place. And like I had kind of said earlier, like I find your TikToks especially very entertaining and very informative, because there's some stuff that you have done, like some serious reading on some of this stuff.
I don't make a video unless I've like research stuff about it. And of course I'm giving my opinion. Like the whole point is like I'm taking this research and I'm trying to dumb it down, because it's freaking like, come on,
it's a lot, right?
Hello,
like I think
I love you. Can you use like simpler words for people like me? Like I just know what gaslighting means. Like honestly, can you like help a girl out? Stop with the big language. Yeah, I would truly appreciate it. So no, but really like, so that's really what I want to do, is help people understand things that seem just like too much. Too much to make.
Not everybody has time to go get a PhD in ancient Assyriology or whatever. Like,
why, know, why not? Hello.
Anyway,
stuff with your time, please.
I appreciate what you do. I find your stuff awesome. So if you want to go and support Rion with what she's doing, you'll find her all over the internet. So TikTok, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, Twitter. You're doing a lot of sort of things. So thank you so much for being on the show with us tonight.
Absolutely.
And like I mentioned our emails earlier, if you are also wanting to get involved in the community here at the Atheist Community of Austin, we do have a couple of places for you to go. We do have a Discord. The Discord is a fan-run group, so a place to kind of bounce off ideas. Maybe our last caller can send some images over there and kind of just bounce off some things. Even if you're thinking about calling the show, go in there first and say like, okay, this is kind of what I'm thinking. Talk to some people in there and then give us a call. Another place is our Facebook group, another fan-run group. Facebook, you know the vibe on Facebook. It's kind of fun and upbeat and just like a place to kind of go and hang out. And especially when new kind of weird things happen, like whatever it was on Mars, like the insectoids on Mars. We didn't even touch on that this week, and that's like an ongoing call we've been having. So don't hesitate to get involved with the community if you're interested in, getting involved with the ACA. We are always looking for volunteers as well. And speaking of wonderful volunteers, we need to take some time to thank the crew. Our crew here makes everything happen. They're all amazing. And look at that cute little kitty. Oh my gosh.
Aw, meow.
Love you all so much. Thank you so much for everything that you do in making the show happen. Rion, any last words for our audience tonight?
You know what? Just be be open to asking questions. Like if you're deconstructing, just ask questions. Don't be afraid, and just enjoy the ride. I know it sounds weird, but you're freeing yourself. You are giving yourself the freedom of thought, and it's an amazing feeling. So go into it.
Thank you.
Go into it.
That's perfect, and it fits right along with our theme here. As you on your journey, just always keep wanting the truth. Right? Thanks for joining us.
Truth wanted.
Yep. Have a good night, everyone. Thank you for watching.
Watch The Non-Prophets and join the hosts in the live chat, Sundays at 3 p.m. Central, between The Atheist Experience and Talk Hidden. Visit tiny.cc/YTNP.